We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car backed, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
And then it was a bit weird being living in the house together with all these people you don't know from different parts of the world. At first it was a bit strange, and I was a bit anxious. But then when the time passed and we got to know each other, it was very interesting. I think it was a great experience.
This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, our dear listener, thank you so much for joining us on Hear My True Story podcast. It is me, your host, Otako, and I'm really, really happy this time again to have you this week on our wonderful podcast. Yes, we still have a conversation with our guest from the previous episode, and this time we are going to talk more about international collaborations. We shall get to learn more how to organize one, how to find one as an artist, what are the benefits of being part of a collaboration or an international project, what are the experiences, what are the challenges. So we shall go deep into this conversation. And if you really want to hear from our guest and to know how it is like being part of an international project, please stay on this wonderful podcast.
This week's special guest on your favorite podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yes, my dear guest, my friend. I'm happy again to have you this week. And yes, would you maybe introduce yourself to the listeners to get to know you, to know who's behind the microphone and who is behind the laptop?
Of course. Hello, my friend. It's good to be back. I'm Isra. I'm an Egyptian artist based in Cairo, Egypt. And I'm happy to be here with you.
Yes, thank you. For our listeners who didn't hear the previous episode, maybe you can listen to the previous episode to know more about what Isra does as an artist. She lives in Egypt and she does some more things about theater for children, theater with children, and also maybe the way her activities that she does is more about speaking and sharing stories through theater. Yes, my friend, how did you start as an artist? How did you get into these collaborations and international projects, and why?
Yes, of course. Well, back in 2019, I was working with this association here in Egypt that I'm still working with today, and they're called Afkar Arts Center. And what they do is they do arts education for children, and they do a lot of international projects and collaborations. And I've always thought that international projects and international collaborations are very important because it's always it's important to learn about other people and other cultures and what they do, share experiences. I think it helps you open up your mind to different parts of the world, realize how big the world is and how different everyone is, and yet how everyone is still the same. And to connect with people from different parts of the world has always been very interesting to me. So in 2019, a theater company from France reached out to the association I work with and they asked them to connect them with an artist from Egypt who would like to participate in an international project, an international collaboration. So they forwarded the email to me, and they told me to contact the theater if I was interested. And that's how I first contacted Maxime, who was the director from the French company that contacted Afkar. So we started talking, and he explained to me a bit about the project, which was very interesting to me. It was a project about food mainly, which is something I love. And it was about food from different cultures and how food is connected to culture, to history, to colonization, to global exchange, to global trade, to everything. So it was very interesting. So I said, yes, I want to do it. And we started to work on the paperwork, get everything done. And I went to France, and that's where I met you and the rest of the amazing artists that were with us on that project.
Yeah, we are many artists. I mean, I think we are around.
I think there were 10 artists.
10 artists. Yeah, 10 artists from how many countries? We had someone from Egypt. That was you. I was from Uganda. Yeah, we had someone from Yemen. We had someone from France, and then Hong Kong,
Nepal, Hong Kong, and Peru.
Yeah.
I think there were 8 countries, yeah.
India was too there.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So we got to know each other on such a big project. I mean, what was your experience working on this project called the Spice Road? Maybe I can tell the artists, the listeners, we were on a big project which is called Spice Road. Yeah, it was done by the French company in France that really organized this wonderful project that brought together artists from different organizations and countries. It was so wonderful. And the first time I met you, I was like, this one is the one from Egypt. So, and what was your experience being part of a collaboration with so many artists from different cultural backgrounds, accents, language,
Yes, it was a bit scary at first. Like, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what would happen. And I remember the first day when I arrived, I was the first one to arrive, and I met Max in Paris, and we spent the night in Paris. And the next day there was a lot of running to catch the trains, and then we got to a small town. I don't even remember the name. A very small town next to where we would stay later on, and there was a music festival, and it was very overwhelming. It was a very strange start. And then the next person I met was Manoj from Nepal. He came, and then we met, and it was a bit awkward at first. Like, hi, oh, you're the other artist. You're from Nepal. And then we started to talk and got to know each other, got to know a bit of the background, what he does back in Nepal. And then we met Eric. Eric came, and then I realized that Eric was the one that put Max in contact with the association in Egypt, because he had been to Egypt and he met them here. So that was very interesting, and we got to talking. And then we went to the house where we stayed for the rest of the time of the project, and that's where I met. Everyone started to arrive, and then you came. I think you were the last to come. I'm not sure if I remember correctly.
I think I was the last. Maybe. Yeah, I think I was the last to come because I was coming from here in German. Yeah.
Yes. And then I remember also something funny that happened that was also a bit strange when Kathy and Hannah arrived from Germany by car, and their car broke down, and they had to walk for a bit, and then we had to walk back to their car to bring it back to the house. That was I'm not sure if you had arrived then or not yet. I'm not sure, but it was also a funny experience. And then it was a bit weird being living in the house together with all these people you don't know from different parts of the world. At first it was a bit strange, and I was a bit anxious. But then when the time passed and we got to know each other, it was very interesting. I think it was a great experience. Just hearing each other's stories and sharing things, and also because we all share the same passion. We all work in theater, and we were working on a theater project, so we had this thing in common despite all the differences. So it was like a meeting point for everyone, where we discussed things, we talked about everything, we shared our stories, we shared what we know about the topic we're discussing. So I think it was very interesting and very enriching, and also to see the different things that bothered everyone. Like everyone had something that they liked, something that they didn't like, and it was very different for everyone. So I think the whole experience was very interesting.
Yeah. I also remember that when you mention it, I just remember all these experiences, meeting people from different cultures, cultural background, language, countries, continent, and then you are there, you are living in the same roof, and you have to understand how things work. Yeah. And the topic was food. Imagine.
Yes.
At first I was like, okay, food, what are we going to talk about? Food.
Yeah.
And then
it was different foods, and when we started cooking for each other, I think that was my favorite part of the whole project. It was very interesting to eat everyone's dishes and to cook your own dish. And
I mean, for our dear listeners, we lived like 10 people from different countries, and we had this at least someone would cook every week for us, their food, their culture food. I loved that moment too, and I loved all the dishes these people made for us. It was really wonderful. I liked so much meat. Of course, there were vegetarians there. Yeah.
Yes. Where's the chicken?
Yeah, it was the chicken. Yeah, I mean, for me, where I come from, like in Uganda, it's easier to find chicken that has bones. Yeah. My first experience in Europe was that I went. It was in Hong Kong, I think, 2013. When I went and I bought chicken had no bones. It was just chicken with no bones. I was like, this is chicken, but it has no bones. But anyway, I got to learn so much from these collaborations and exchanges.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I wanted, as like you as an artist, what would you say, like, what are the benefits of someone being part of these wonderful collaborations or maybe culture exchanges?
I think it's very important to, like I said before, it's important to learn about other cultures, because imagine being very enclosed in your environment and not know anything about anything outside of your community or your environment. It's a bit like, how do you say, short-visioned, or I'm not sure if I'm expressing it correctly, but it has always been interesting for me to learn about the world and other cultures and other people. It was a dream of mine since I was a child. When we first learned in school about the globe and different countries and how big the earth was and that we lived on a small part of it, to me that was mind-blowing, and I kept thinking, how can I just live and die in one tiny spot of this big planet that we have? I want to see everything. I want to meet everyone, and I want to see all the places and get to know all the cultures and how other people live. And that was before internet was so easily accessible for everyone. And then when I started growing and when I was more exposed to the internet, to seeing more about the outside world and what people were living like, and learning that there are many different cultures and many different countries, and every country had its own history and its own culture, and people had their own habits, their own traditions. That was very interesting for me, and this was something that I felt like I want to experience that. I don't want to limit myself to whatever is just around me or whatever I can see around me. So these kinds of projects, I think, are important because they make you more connected with the world, and they make you more understanding and empathetic of everyone around you, of human beings, of how we come to be and how we interact and how we feel. And I think it's just it's really important. I will keep stressing on this point. I think it is very important to exchange.
Yeah. And then I want to ask you, how many so far exchanges have you made as an artist? How many exchanges have you made so far? And which countries have you been to, as in worked with?
I've until now, this was like my first big project as a collaboration project was this one, the Spice Road project. But I've had a few like smaller projects before that where after that in 2020 when I started working on my performance. There was this German company that I had met the director of here in Egypt a few years before I started working on the project, and I was very interested in their work and how they approached theater for children, how they did their work, and so I wrote to them. I wrote to the director and I told him that I'm working on this project, and I understand that now because of COVID, everyone is not working as much as before. So I'm trying to work on this project, and I would be very interested if you could mentor my process, and I could send you what I'm working on, and then we can discuss it and see how we can collaborate on this work online, since it was not really a possibility that we actually meet in person and have a real collaboration face to face. And he accepted, and we started working on that project. And it was very interesting because the main idea of my project is very focused on. It's very related to Egyptian culture and how they view donkeys, because that's what my project is about. Okay, so for people who are just listening in, it's a show about donkeys and about the prejudice or the ideas that people have preconceived of this animal here in Egypt. People always think of donkeys as like stupid animals who are very stupid and stubborn, don't understand anything. They're just there to work, do the work, and that's it. So I'm trying to create a piece where about a donkey that is where children can watch it and start to question these ideas that we have, and maybe feel a bit more compassionate and connected with this animal. So it was interesting to hear his side of the story, because it's a different culture. They view donkeys differently. It was interesting to hear how he would approach this project from his background. It was an interesting collaboration. And before that, I haven't traveled anywhere, honestly, for a collaboration on a project. I've only just visited a few countries, attending theater performances, attending a festival. The first one was in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. It was a showcase of Dutch performances for children. So I went to Amsterdam and I attended the shows there, and it was very interesting again to meet artists from the Netherlands, to meet different companies and how different companies work on theater projects for children. And the second time, it was also in the Netherlands, but in a town called Breda. And this time it was an international festival. So there were many different companies from different parts of mainly Europe, but there was also some companies from outside of Europe, which was also very interesting to see and compare how everyone works and approaches children, and meet all those people from different companies. It's important as an artist to see what's going on out there, what's happening, what are people doing, what are other artists working on. It's important for your own imagination and for your own creativity to see other people's work and to experience it. So that was very interesting and important for me. And also here in Egypt, because of the Hakawi International Arts Festival, they also always invite companies from different parts of the world. That was, I think, these are like the main projects that I could think of right now.
Yeah, so that means you have had at least in contact with other artists from other part of the globe, in exchanges, either directly or indirectly. You have had contact with people in this kind of field of collaborations, and that's nice to hear. Yeah. Did you, like, another thing that I wanted to ask you, as in you have traveled to Europe, in collaborations and that. You can say about it or not, you can decide. What are your experiences as in moving from Egypt to, European countries for collaboration? Do you find it easier, or do you find it a bit challenging in terms of like migration policies that are there? For example, for visas and that.
Yes, and I remember this was also a very hot topic in our project back in 2019 in the Spice Road, because there was a lot of struggles with the paperwork for everyone, since everyone was coming from different countries and everyone had their own restrictions and their own rules and all that. I would say that I was very lucky as an individual, because I had the association that I worked with, AFCA, they helped a lot with the paperwork. Of course, there's a lot of paperwork that you need to put in. You have to apply for visas in advance, a long time in advance. And there's a chance you won't get accepted. It's not like guaranteed or anything. It's like an application where you have to wait if the embassy will decide if they will grant you entrance or not. It doesn't matter where you're going or what you're doing. They have to have a background check on you. They have to check your bank accounts. There's a lot of restrictions, honestly, and I think it's very difficult for a lot of people. But I was lucky because the organization helped a lot with the paperwork, and they also had some contacts in the embassies that people that know the organization and work with them and trust them. So they made the process a bit more easier. So I think I was lucky in that way, and that made getting the visas easier for me than other people. Because I remember before that, I have a friend from Germany, actually, a very dear friend of mine that I met in high school. She was here in Egypt as an exchange student when we were in high school. And we became best friends since then. That was, I think, in 2008, many, many years ago. And and she tried to invite me to Germany to visit her family one year, and it didn't work because there was so many paperworks and a lot of things that we had to work through, and I couldn't even get an appointment at the embassy to apply for the visa. So I couldn't even apply. It's not that I applied and got rejected. I wasn't able to apply in the first place. So yeah, so it's not easy. It's not always easy, but I was lucky. I was lucky with these projects. I could manage to get the visa and the paperwork. And the other issue is the money. It's very expensive to travel to Europe or to travel to anywhere outside of the country, because the flight tickets are crazy expensive, the accommodation and everything. So I was also lucky because I always had funding, or I was always supported on the projects and the travels that I did. So yeah, that helped a lot as well. And I think if any other project would come that I don't have the support, the financial support, I wouldn't be able to do it because it would be way too expensive.
Make sure to leave a review. This makes our day and fuels future episodes. Hear my true story.
And then I want to ask you, why do embassies from European countries really make it difficult for artists from the African continent to travel? Because I've had experiences from people, I've heard from people who have been denied visas. I mean, why? Do you know anything? Because I don't know about Egypt. For Uganda, it's always either you don't have a reference or you don't have documents that you need, or in Uganda, they can even just say no because they want to say no.
Yeah, it's the same here. It's either you will not have the right documents, you will not have the right balance in your bank account, or you can have everything right and they would still say no just because they want to. And it just, I mean, I really don't know. I don't understand it, but I think it has to do with them being worried that you might go and never come back, and you might just stay there. And to me, that's just really stupid, honestly.
Yeah.
It
is stupid because when I really don't understand when European countries or maybe from the global north say we are pushing for exchange programs and culture exchanges, but it is very easy for them to come to our countries without even going through hardship. But for a culture exchange, we need to prove so many documentation. Like, for example, this year I invited people from Uganda, and I had to put a lot of documentation. I had to put my bank account here to know that I'm really employed. I have to show that I am committing that these people, if they disappear, it's my responsibility. There's a lot of documentation that I have to submit, not alone, but also with my wife. We have to do this together to prove that we invite people and they come, but their responsibility is ours. You get that? So,
yeah.
Yet for us, when I have also an organization that hosts young people from Europe, mainly in German, who come to do volunteer or internship, they don't prove a lot. They just need to apply for a visa, and the moment they get a visa online, without even, it takes them like 1 to 2 days, and the visa is there, and they just fly to Uganda. And they don't even prove that they are going to stay with someone in Uganda as long as they get their visa. You get that? So it is very easy for people to come to our continent in Africa, but it's so hard. We have to prove life. We have to prove in Uganda, you have to prove even that you have property in Uganda, that you bought property that is yours in your names with a bank account, with the amount of money that need to be there. And then you send in for application for a visa, and then they refuse it. You get that?
Yes, it's the same. Exactly. Every time I hear stories from artists that come to visit Egypt whenever they want, they just woke up one day and saw an opportunity in Egypt and thought, yeah, we'll go to Egypt. And they just pack a bag and go like they're walking down the street. And actually, they don't even need to apply for a visa online for Egypt. They can just arrive and buy it here at the airport. It just feels so unfair, honestly.
Yeah, it's unfair. And then
so unfair.
I remember, it wasn't me in the Spice Road who came late. There was someone from Peru.
Yes.
You remember? Someone from Peru reached late because of the visa issues, if I may remember well.
Yes, that's true, yes.
And we made a joke about it because that day we had coffee from Peru. And we're like, oh my God, someone from Peru is not here, but the coffee is already here from Peru.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I mean, there are a lot of factors to it, honestly. It's because our countries are poor and we all want to leave our countries. That's the idea they have, is that we all want to move to Europe.
But let me tell you something. This is, it's not in collaborations, but I can just say it here, since we are talking about exchange programs and people moving from one country to another. When the people from the global north, for example, Europe, fear that people from Africa moving to Europe and they will stay there. Do you know how many numbers of people from Europe that come to take opportunities from Africa because they can't find jobs in Europe? So they are Europeans, they are white people, they move to Africa and they take opportunities from us and they live there without even anyone stopping them.
Yes, definitely. I mean, you see it here in Egypt all the time. Do you know, something I saw when I first graduated college, I started working for a year as an art teacher in a school. And it was an international school, so they had to have a certain number of foreign teachers. And you would see that the teachers from Egypt would be paid, say, the amount X. The foreign teacher teaching the exact same subject to the exact same age group of the students get paid 3 times that number. And so... plus, they get provided with a lot of other perks. So there's so many people that come from Europe or from the global north to live here because it pays well, and their pay compared to the expenses here in Egypt is so much more less. I mean, they get paid way more than the expenses that they would need to spend here. So they have a really nice job, great pay that they will never get in Europe. And they live their best life because the money they make here makes them really wealthy compared to the economy of the place where they're living. So they come and they get better opportunities than the than the natives of the place where they're visiting.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when people from Africa, for example, go to Europe, they don't get really great jobs or good pay. They struggle to make a living and to survive.
Yeah, you are speaking to someone who's right now living in Europe. I mean, I came with my credentials as an artist, but also a professionally trained as a teacher. But I couldn't teach here. I had to go back and study, do a vocational training where I have to work and study. And it's not a job that pays you so much, you know. You can't compete with the natives. There's a lot of challenges that I can't speak out right now on this same topic. Yeah, it will be so much time. But there's that challenge. I can't leave Europe. I'm forced to live in my small way of living that I came from Africa. This is the kind of job you do. I have colleagues who are graduates. They come to Europe. They find no job. They work in cleaning jobs. They work in hard jobs. You cannot work if you're a graduate with a master's, because that's the only thing. You find them working in Amazon, working in these factories, because these are the jobs they live for them. But on the other way around, I know Europeans or people from Germany who moved to Uganda as failures in German, but they made fortune. They make fortune in Uganda. They get, and when they reach there, they start small, funny projects of theater or of creative arts, and they get funding. Or they start small organizations, and they get funding, and they're living Europe in Africa.
Yeah.
So
yes, exactly. So it's just an unfair world, and I don't know where that. I mean, we know where that comes from and how that started.
Yeah, of
course. But I don't know how and if it's fixable or changeable.
Yeah, of course, it is another story for another day. But anyway, So just like you said, visas and money makes it difficult for people to really.
Yes, I think these are the main difficulties, and also opportunities. I mean, there are a lot of collaboration projects happening, but not enough for all the artists, and it's not always easy to find collaboration opportunities. So
that brings the question: how do you find your collaboration opportunities? Because you have found some, you have been part of festivals. How do you find these things? Maybe there's someone listening that would like to know how you find these collaborations, and maybe festival exchange programs, maybe when you go for workshops and that. How do you find these things?
To be honest, it started by chance. That I started working with this organization. But it's also it's something that if it's something that you're interested in and you want to do, so you start looking into it and seeing opportunities, where opportunities lie, where you can find these projects. You start working on projects in your own context, in your own community, and then you look for opportunities of collaborating with people who work in the same field as you, and that's how it happened for me. I started working with this organization here in Egypt, and they organized an international arts festival. And because I was very interested and I was eager to work on these projects, they invited me to join them on to go attend the first festival in the Netherlands. So that's how I went on the first trip to Europe with the organization, because I wanted to see other performances that were made for children, to learn more and to meet more artists working in the same field, because I wanted to see how their process goes and how they did the work and how it all starts and all that. So I applied, and they took me with them. They helped me a lot with everything and the paperwork and all that. And then again, like I told you the story of how I came to be a part of this Price Road project. It was the same thing. They contacted the organization. So because I was working with the organization and because I showed interest in theater and I was working in theater and I seemed like a good candidate for this project, so they suggested me and they put me in contact with Max, with the organization, with the theater in France.
I get that. So that way, in simple terms, someone needs to be able to to find the networks that he needs to get for such
Yes, it's all
collaborations.
about networking. That's the thing about the art scene, or any other scene for that matter. It's about networking and knowing people and meeting a lot of different people who work in the field, and putting yourself out there as someone who's committed, who likes to who works and who creates things, so that you're on top of people's minds when opportunities come. They would contact you, or they will let you know, or they will put you in contact with the right people.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Since you have been to Europe at some point, as an artist, I want to ask you this question, but you are really free to either say something about it or not. Did you at any point encounter racism in your field of work as an artist when you moved to these collaborations, Global North, let me say, Europe in particular?
Well, to be honest, not really. Not personally. Like I didn't encounter, because I was also lucky to work with amazing people on all the projects that I've been a part of, and even during the festival. And also, honestly, because I was not put in a position where I needed to deal with something or get something done. So I wasn't really put in a position where someone can discriminate against me or be racist against me. And I just choose to ignore the racist people and not deal with them, because I could. I had that privilege. I could just not deal with them. But again, I was lucky not to encounter anything during my visits in Europe.
Well, okay, thanks for sharing with me that. Yeah. The last thing I would maybe ask you a question. Have you had more like some exchanges within African continent as an artist, or maybe with your organization? How is it like exchanges within Africa for artists?
Not yet, but this is something that I am really looking to do. I am really interested, and I think it's very important to not just seek collaborations in the global north, but to also collaborate within the continent. I have met amazing people in the festival, in the Hakawi Festival from South Africa. And I also think that, Africa is huge. And there are a lot of amazing artists in Africa that I really hope that I get the chance to collaborate with one day. And I look forward to it. And I'm just waiting for the right chance.
Yeah, but do you have any? I don't know. For me, I find it difficult to really do collaborations within the African continent. I don't know about you, whether you also find it difficult.
I haven't had, like I told you, everything that all the projects that I worked with just came to me by chance. It just happened. Until now, I haven't had the chance to have any collaborations in Africa, and but I think I'm not sure if it will be difficult or not. But I think it is probably difficult. There are not many opportunities, to be honest, and I don't know why. Like I can't put my hand on it. But tell me, why do you think it's difficult, or how did you find it difficult?
For me, I found it difficult because, one, there are no opportunities, and if they are there are no resources for you to do them. You need funding, and most African governments don't fund art and culture. You get that? And also the problem of connection within movement in terms of transportation. It's not easy. It can be cheaper to fly from one part of Africa to Europe than from some part of Africa to another part of Africa, because of connections in terms of flights can be difficult to find. And the road transport system is also difficult. I found it that way. And also you need funding. And most of the times you find that these fundings are either funded by European countries that are encouraging cultural exchanges within their colonies. Okay, within the countries that were their colonies. You get that? So there's that challenge of funding to support art in Africa. It makes it difficult.
Yes, I think, that's true. That's why most of the opportunities available are collaborations with most the European countries, because this is where the funding lies. This is where you get the funding and the support, and this is what the programs offer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, I agree. I think that's maybe why I didn't get any chance for African collaborations.
Yeah. For example, I would like to invite you to Uganda, but I have to look for money how to do a project with someone in an African country and is funded to cover the transportation to that country, the living in that country. And when funders are funding, they can give money to a European artist first before they give to an African artist to get this kind of project.
Yeah,
you get that?
yeah.
And that's the problem, because it is another form of new colonialism where it is like we give the people from our side to just do projects with you guys. You either come to us or we come to you. I know big theater companies here in Europe and also here in Germany who do productions in Uganda. And they bring artists from Uganda to Germany. And that's the only thing they can do. But they can't give money to artists in Uganda to bring artists from Germany to Uganda. It will always be difficult because the funding for the culture exchange program is always one-sided. You either to be European citizen, you can get this money. Yeah.
Well, that's my ultimate goal. Honestly, it sounds like a far dream, but I'm hoping that one day I will find something like some kind of, I don't know, work or business or investment that will make me very rich, that I can support the artwork and support my art and support collaborations and travels and not have to depend on donors and support from governments.
Yeah.
Support that comes with an agenda is not support, honestly.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but anyway, before we conclude our conversation, I want to ask you another question. Like, what advice would you give to an organization or maybe someone who wants to organize an exchange program from your experience? For example, you work with an organization in Egypt, you have international theater festivals. I mean, how can someone organize such exchanges with an artist from Africa or from Egypt? What advice do you have for them?
I don't know if I have an advice, but I think from what I learned, it's if you have a chance to organize something where you can collaborate with artists from a different background or from different culture and work on it, do it, try to find learn about this the background and the culture of this artist, and know what you're collaborating on, know what you want to share, and don't expect anything from the other side, because you don't know. If you have expectations, it ruins the experience, because it doesn't make sense to expect something you don't know about. So I think it's about finding the right funding, know what your program is and what you want out of this experience, what specific field it's about, and I think if that makes sense. I'm not sure if
you make sense. Yeah, you make sense with that. What you are saying, because I've had people who have had experiences of doing collaboration with African artists, and then they find that projects are not implemented because they don't know the background of the artist. They did not do research. And what you are saying is to do the research to know before you start anything with anyone.
Of course, yes, it's important. It's the most important thing. I mean, if I'm interested in, say, object theater or experimental theater, I can't reach out to an artist who does like classical theater and expect for this exchange to give me what I want or be relatable to me. You have to research the background of the artist, what this artist does, how they work, and if this is what you're looking to explore more or to learn about or to exchange in.
Yeah.
And it's also an exchange project, so you will have to offer something in exchange. You will have to also be to have a background in the same field as the other artist, or be something that interests the other artist, because it's not like someone coming to pass on knowledge. It's not like this artist is coming. It's different if this artist is coming to give a master class, for example. So this artist is coming with the information that is going to lay it to you and give you the information or the knowledge. That's different from exchange. Exchange is when you collaborate on something together and you exchange information, you exchange experiences, you exchange cultural backgrounds. Yeah. So I think it's important to also know what you want out of this project. Is it exchange? Is it are you seeking knowledge or expertise from this person? It's to know what you want out of this experiment or out of this collaboration.
Does that apply to organizations or also to artists, the participants?
No, of course, it also applies to artists. Like, for example, here, what I've had one experience where there was a choreographer director from Switzerland that came to Egypt to teach a class in creating theater for children, dance theater for children. And everyone that attended, because it was a free workshop, it wasn't a free workshop actually, it was a paid workshop, but the organizers that invited this artist put a rule that some of the artists that work with them have to attend it for free. They were so many, and they were so they had no idea what theater for children was. They didn't work, they didn't do theater for children. This was not what they did. Most of them were theater performers, yes, but they had no background about theater for children, dance theater for children. They had no interest in it. They just attended this workshop because it was an exchange workshop. And they attended it for free, while the other participants that came because they were interested in this in the specific theme of the project of the workshop, and they paid for it. And we were outnumbered by the other participants who had no idea, so they took the whole workshop into a different direction. It turned into a completely different workshop. So the artist that came from Switzerland had to change her program to adjust to the majority of the people attending the workshop. So when that kind of thing happens, it's a bit frustrating.
Yes, so that means that people need to be...
For the artists as well, yes.
Yeah, for the artists, also for the participants and the organizers too. Well,
yes.
Yeah, before we get to the end of this episode, I would like to ask you, is there anything that you'd like to share with the audience that maybe we have not talked about, maybe you have forgotten to talk about, and you want to tell the audience?
I always find it difficult to answer these questions because once you ask them, my mind goes in a million different directions trying to think. But I hope not. I hope we got to cover everything we wanted to discuss. And once again, I'm really glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me on your podcast. And I want to thank everyone who's listening to us. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you don't have any questions that we missed. And if you do, we will talk again.
Yeah. But anyway, since you have nothing more to say, maybe you can say bye to the listeners before I also say bye to the listeners.
Yes. Thank you so much again. And thank you for everyone for listening in. And I hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.
Yeah, our dear listeners, thank you so much for being with us on this wonderful podcast. It was this last conversation with Isra, and it was so nice that we got to learn so much from her, how you can work on collaborations, what you have to consider as an artist or as an organization, and also research is important before you do into anything like any exchange program. Yeah, and for that reason, I just want to say bye and thanks for listening.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear my true story.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, music by Edwin Matovo, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.